Nice job, Noelia. We got it.
And we're going live.
We're going live.
Hello, everyone. I am so sorry for the technical difficulties we've had, but if you can hear us, please type llama in the chat. And my name is Noelia. I will be your host today, and I am here with William. Will, what do you prefer, William?
Either one. Will's good. Yeah.
We are here today with another live demo from Etchr. We are so happy you are here. Thank you very, very much for your patience. We really appreciate that. And I see we have people from all over in different continents. So thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited. Before we get on with the whole process, I just wanted to make sure that you know to type question in all caps followed by your question if you have any questions. That way I can easily find them in the chat, and we will be answering as many questions as we can today. If they are relevant to what Will is doing, I will ask it at the moment. If not, I will be saving it for a Q&A at the end. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification buttons so that you can get notified whenever we are going live again. And invite your friends to join us today. Copy the link and share it with them. We would love to have more people here. I will be dropping in the chat the link for our feedback survey because we appreciate the feedback that you give us. So just takes, I think, 15 seconds to do that. And without further ado, Will, it's all to you.
How's it going, everyone? Good morning. It's Sunday morning here where I'm at, and I'm from Northern California in the Bay Area, kind of outside of San Francisco. A little bit about me. I'm not a professional painter, but I love painting. I've been painting my whole life, drawing. It's always been a hobby of mine. I studied it a little bit in college. I did a minor in studio art. So I've been dabbling with it. During the day, I'm a dentist, so I'm working with my hands a lot. I love it. And then on the weekends and at night, I love to paint. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of what I do and how I come up with, my paintings. I'm just going to get right into it. I'll show you a few of my paintings that I've done initially. You can see these on my Instagram at Art Milco. That's Art, M-I-L-C-O. Check it out. I'm open to everybody. I'll message you back. I respond to all your comments. So check me out on Instagram. It'll be fun. If you have any questions, send me a question and I'll get back to you. But really quick, here's what I've done recently. I've been doing a lot of nature paintings, and I've been working with some light and perspective and different complementary colors to kind of create a intriguing image here. So this is one. This is in actually Croatia, where my family's from. I don't know where everybody's from. Drop it in the chat. Let us know where you're from, and let's see where everybody's at right now.
We have people from Holland, San Diego,
all right.
Chicago, Illinois, the Netherlands, Sweden, Vancouver, Canada, Luxembourg, Buffalo, New York.
We are worldwide. All right. Yes. Cool. And this is another one I've done. You can find these on Instagram. Just go check them out. And I put a lot of my process on there too, just some videos, sketches. I'll post techniques on there, but I'll get into it. Anyone could do this, really. It's not hard as long as you follow a certain couple techniques and a certain couple rules that I'll go over today. And lastly, here's this one. So this is more recent work, but this is the kind of stuff I'm doing. I'm using ink. Kind of a one-point perspective, and I'll go over that in a second. But today we're doing a quick sketch here of a forest scene. I like nature. I love getting out of nature. It's my inspiration. So this is what we're doing here. So I'll go over the sketch really quick. If you don't have this, we can probably send it out, or next time we're doing a mini workshop, I'm going to be going over this one here, and we'll send that out to you guys so you can do it beforehand and follow along. But just a couple things, pointers on your sketch. This is really the base of your painting. I like to include a lot of details in this, so you don't need to worry about that later on in the painting. The painting's going to be sort of the layers of the color, and that will kind of create a cool image around your focal point. I like to have a central focal point in the middle, and then everything kind of funneling in towards that. So what you want to do is think about the viewer and think about them looking at the painting and where their eye is going. So initially I want to see a lot of like something big in the foreground with a lot of detail. And that will draw them in initially and kind of, you know, put a little detail here. And so they'll follow along down the path, and any sort of diagonal lines or anything leading to the center will keep them in. And then, and it creates kind of an intriguing, you know, image when you create diagonal lines. So I like to put a lot of light, and you'll see this when I start painting, diagonal light, dynamic lines coming through, usually from the upper left. It can be from anywhere, but that creates an intriguing image as well. So let's go into it. So I'm just gonna start painting here. I usually will paint, and these are kind of what I do. You can kind of make up your own rules, but generally speaking, I like to go from warm paint and warm colors to dark colors. Paint the background first, and then transition into the foreground. But that's kind of general rules I use. I'll break those a little bit sometimes. So I'm gonna jump right in here. So I'll use my yellows first. So this is kind of a lemon yellow here, and I'll just paint straight on like this. Don't worry about painting over certain things.
And what you've done, Will, is you've wetted your entire page before you even added anything to it, right?
Exactly. So what I do is, what you'll need if you want to follow my technique is some permanent ink, like either waterproof or really water resistant pens. I like to use Micron pens. Check them out. There's some pictures on my Instagram if you don't know what those are. Micron pens, and they're really good. And so what I do is I'll draw my image, and then what I'll do is I'll take it to the sink and just completely drench it in water, the whole thing. Soak it in water, and hopefully your ink doesn't run. And then and it usually stays on there. I mean, these pens have been good for me. And so what that does is it just wets the entire piece of paper. So when you tape it down, it doesn't get all those wrinkles. If you paint wet on a dry piece of paper, it'll start bubbling up, and you get these wrinkles on the paper, and your watercolor will start to pool in those areas. So that's why I do it. There's other techniques you can use for that, but that's mainly what I use.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
What type of paper are you using today?
Yeah, I tried out a lot of different papers, but I really landed on Arches cold pressed 140 gram paper. It's like the best paper I've ever used. I tried a bunch of different ones, but this one really works the best.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what size is it?
The paper that I'm painting on right now?
Yeah.
So this is 8 by 10. I mean, I bought a big set of paper that I can cut down, but I just cut this one 8 by 10 so it can fit into this image here for us to view. I usually paint a little bit bigger, but since we're doing like a quick painting here, smaller is better, and this will work out fine.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So the yellow that you just added, is that the light that's coming in between trees?
Exactly. So that's the lighter areas. Also, yellow's nice too because it's a nice base color that you can paint on top of easily. Like greens go really nice on top of it. Just think of, if you really, I think the best thing that I did is learned some, just the color wheel and color theory, and that'll help you a lot. So yellows make a good base for a lot of green colors, and it's easy to paint over because it's the lightest. So just think of you painting over the top. You can't really paint blue first because that's so dark. You're not going to be able to get anything blending after that.
Gotcha.
So just think of where the light's coming from. Sometimes I'll put like something at the corner of the painting, like right here, to just remind yourself. You can do that. That's a little tip I used to do.
For the light source?
For the light source. So my light source is here, and always think of where your light source is coming from. And then you'll see me kind of dabbing the paper here to keep some of the white areas. I'll throw some water in and dab to keep some white areas of the paper. Generally speaking, you want your values, which is the lightness and the darkness of color, to be lighter in the back and kind of darker and more intense in the front. So, all right. Typically I'll let the painting completely dry, and then I'll put my next layer on top. And so I'll do some orange right now. I think this is Cad Red Pale, I believe. I'll mix a few colors together. So I'll just throw them in here.
And you've switched brushes for that, haven't you?
Yeah. So this is a nice pointy round brush. It's nice for painting leaves. So this will just be some warmer leaves up here.
And for everyone who is joining us today, I have dropped in the chat the link for the sketch that Will is using. I've also dropped in both reference images in case you weren't able to pull that from the description in our video.
Yeah, so I like to use a lot of complementary colors, a lot of vibrant colors. That's just my style. And so when you're putting colors on your painting and you're thinking of composition, you want to think of how it's going to look in the end. So right here, I'm adding a lot of orange on this side. So I'll probably balance it with my complementary color on this side of the paper, like maybe some deeper blues and purples over here. So there we go. So I'll let that dry over there, and then I'm going to get to the grass area around the tree. So yeah, go ahead.
You are doing wet on wet, right? Because your whole paper was soaked before you even started.
Exactly. So wet on wet initially for your washes works great. I just think of this initial phase as just get color on the paper where it needs to be. You know what I mean? Just put the color where it needs to be. Don't worry too much about the details. You know, this is going to be grass over here, so I'm using some lighter greens back here too. So wet on wet's good for washes. And so this will all be wet. And so if you want to, if you're worried about, you know, a detail that you don't want green, you can take a wet brush with some water on it and just drop wet droplets right where you want the color to come out. And that will open up this area and make it whiter. And so it takes that green out. So right here, there's a couple little flowers in the foreground that I like to keep a different color. So I'll drop some water in here.
That's kind of how you erase or desaturate your paint right there.
Exactly, yeah. So, and what I'll also do while this is wet, to break up all the yellowy green, I'll toss in some red oxide color. I love using this color. And just kind of make it splotchy. But that'll break up the color. You don't want one solid color all the way around. So, and if you think about it, it's like kind of like dirt patches in between the grass. That. It's kind of funny, like initially when you start painting, it's like, this doesn't look very good, you know, until I go through these weird emotions during a painting, like, what am I doing? This doesn't look good. I'll take a break, I'll go do something else, and like, you feel like you kind of messed up your painting initially because it doesn't really look like anything. And it takes time to build the colors and the contrast. And it only really comes together until like the last like 5 to 10 minutes, I feel like, of your painting, once you get all the shadows in there. So I'll let that kind of sit, and then I'll paint the trees over here with a nice light sepia color. I think this is burnt sepia.
Will, some questions about your tape are coming in the chat. What kind of tape are you using that allows you to stick on to wet paper? And how do you find a tape that will not rip off or break up your paper when you peel it off?
Good question. Initially, I was having those issues with like the cheaper pieces of paper, but I haven't had those issues with Arches paper. It's just a little bit more durable. And this paper isn't completely wet. I'll dampen it a little bit with a paper towel before I put it down. I guess I should explain that a little bit better. Yeah, I'll soak it, and then I'll I'll take out the water with paper towel on both sides until you just want the paper to be soaked, and then you want to take out a pretty good amount of moisture. You don't want it to be like dripping when you put it on the board that you're using, right?
Mm-hmm. So why are you using a flat brush for this part?
Well, this is the biggest brush I have right now, and so I'm just covering as much ground as I want.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I was just curious. For your mini workshop that's coming up, you will be doing something similar to this. Will you be teaching us a little bit of how you go about sketching? We have some people in the chat that are interested in learning your sketching techniques.
Totally. If you want to see my, I put like some time lapses of my sketching, but yeah, I'll go over the sketching techniques a little bit. That's really I'd say like just as important as the painting. You need to kind of learn how to create a good composition. Like this is, you know, yeah, I'll go over it definitely. It's tough when you only have an hour, because usually it'll take me at least an hour to do a sketch. You know, I want to get all my details in there, and I guess I can go over that. But really, the way I sketch is very loose. I'll post another video on it on my Instagram, but it's very loose. Like when I'm sketching from a reference photo, just kind of get the general idea of the shapes. You don't worry too much about, you know, how accurate it is. It's not hyper realism. It's just a loose sketch. And I mean, if you think of the grass here, it's like, what does grass look like? Just a couple lines, and they're kind of bending over this trail. And so just, it's quick. Sometimes I don't even take the pen off the paper. You know what I mean? I just continue through. If you've ever done like contour drawings before, you're just keeping the pen on the paper, and it's just as if you were using a pencil, sketching without erasing. Like some lines I don't like, but you just keep it on there and you darken the ones you do, and you just continue. Yeah, I'm not too worried about getting it exactly. I used to be worried about making sure everything looked exactly like, nature, but as long as you get the general shapes, like these leaves took me like five seconds to like just go through this really quick. It's like pointed ovals, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So,
And if I'm not mistaken, before you head into painting during your mini workshop, you will be talking a little bit about how you've sketched the sketch you will be painting on during your mini workshop, right?
totally, yeah.
Yeah. So I've dropped in the chat the link to his mini workshop so that you all can sign up. And yep, his Instagram is artmilko. Thank you, Priyanka, for answering that in the chat. Well, going back to your tape, what tape are you using today?
Oh, sorry, I didn't hit that. Just any masking tape. I don't know. It's I think the Scotch. I just bought it from the hardware store. Any masking tape will work.
So you're just using a masking tape?
Yeah, just painter's tape or masking tape. Scotch masking tape, I think it's called. Yeah.
Cool.
Nothing fancy.
And you draw your sketch directly on your watercolor paper, right?
Exactly, yeah. So what you could do is put the masking tape on there. So if you want to keep that nice border, and then draw your sketch directly on the paper.
Gotcha. And do you use a pencil before you add the pen, or do you go straight to the pen?
I used to do pencil first, but I just go straight to the pen now. It just keeps it loose. Like it takes a little bit more time to, if you're drawing with a pencil, you're so likely to just go back and erase everything. And so what happens is if you use that eraser on watercolor paper, it damages the integrity of the paper, so the watercolor doesn't flow as good. So you really want to. I just kind of stayed away from pencil because but I just know that I'm gonna try to erase something. So if you do any damage to the paper, it doesn't look as good, or the water doesn't sit as well on it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. We're having several questions about your mini workshop. And just to let you all know, the focus for the mini workshop that we'll be doing on March 30th is on how to paint reflections with watercolor, which is why he is having the sketch already done. And we will be providing that to you with all the other details that you get in that email before the mini workshop. So you can copy his sketch, print it out on watercolor paper if you are able to do that, or sketch it yourself by looking at his sketch and the different reference images that he is providing. But really the focus is on how to capture reflections.
Reflections and then kind of like dynamic images like in nature. So we'll go over all that stuff during the workshop. It'll be fun.
Awesome. I'm excited. And yes, when you pay for it, you will be getting all the directions that you will need, and the link and the reference images and everything. Will, what colors are you using now or today?
So right now I'm using, I'll send you guys out, I'll get a whole worksheet on what colors I like to use, but right now I'm using, let's see, this is a mix of Viridian and I think sap green with a little bit of blue. So with your greens, you want to kind of get an idea of your base green. And then if you want it to be cooler, you can cool it down with a blue. Or if you want it to be warmer, you warm it up with a yellow. But typically I use just a general, here's my travel palette here. It's just Winsor and Newton general, I think the Cotman brand ones, but you can find it online. It's funny, I didn't really know all the names of the colors until I had to had to like start talking about them. But the yellows I typically use are cad yellow or a lemon yellow, green, sap green, or viridian. I've dabbled with a bunch of other yellows too. I love, I'll throw some quinacridone gold in my greens to warm it up. So this is like a quinacridone gold to kind of warm up these areas that I think are going to be a little bit lighter.
Gotcha.
So that's a good one to mix with a blue. If you're mixing your colors, quinacridone gold and blues really mix well to create a nice greens. What else? Yeah, I love ultramarine blue. I've been using a lot of French ultramarine blue. I just like the pigment of it lately. It's a little bit lighter. But that's the main blue I love to use, ultramarine. It's just really good for mixing. Initially, I'll mix a lot of grays with it on my palette.
Do you add burnt sienna to make those grays, or?
Yeah, that's a pretty quick way to make a gray is burnt sienna and ultramarine, or raw umber gets a little bit of deeper gray. I mean, okay. So I'll let this dry a little bit because I kind of like where we're going here. Let me paint these leaves on the tree. So
what color are you using for those leaves?
It's a little too much water. So this is let me see. I mixed this earlier. A green. I think this is a gold green, and I may have toned it down or neutralized it a little bit with a burnt sienna. So that's another tip you can use is neutralizing colors with your browns or the opposite complementary color. You can kind of neutralize those colors so they're not as deep. So initially I'll mix a lot of paint on my palette, and then my palette will start to, transform into different colors. So I'll just look at the palette, see what I want to mix together, if I want to make it cooler or warmer, and you'll get these nice grays that will just mix from your palette as you continue to paint. And so you want to use those to kind of pull colors together, or glaze at the very end. You can glaze with the grays.
And you don't use your colors very heavily saturated, do you?
Not initially. So this is the first phase here. So yeah, I don't like to go straight onto the paper. I use a lot of water initially. So I'm just kind of filling up the white spots where I want color to be here. And so I'm going to use the blow dryer now. It's going to get a little loud.
Oh, Zoom knows and it mutes it out. It's really smart. That's really cool though. If you are able to follow along, or if you try this later, once you can print out Will's sketch or copy his sketch, we would love to see your artwork. So please share it with us on your social media and tag us with the hashtag Etchr Mini Workshop. And that also happens to enter you in a giveaway at the end of the month.
All right. Should I mute myself right there? Or?
No, we couldn't hear the hairdryer.
Are you getting it? Okay, that's nice.
Yeah. Zoom is intelligent and it knows how to do that on its own.
Are you serious? That's amazing.
Yeah.
The things I learned during, this COVID pandemic, right?
Yeah, we all have, I think, a lot about technology, but it's also learning a lot about art since we know how to use the technology now to share our artwork even more.
Yeah, I love it.
So
Yeah,
what are you adding in? Sorry.
This is I think this is Cad Red and a little bit of a yellow. Let's see, with Cad Yellow, I believe. And
Okay.
so I'm just adding one more layer to my leaves up here.
So how much did you dry your paper with the hairdryer?
That's a good question. It's fairly dry. It's still a little wet. I mean, you can kind of see it here. Pretty much to. It's hard to gauge that. Pretty dry, not
Okay.
like bare dry or.
So there's still some dampness to it?
There's a little dampness to it, yeah. And so what I'm doing here is adding a little bit more warm colors. I like to paint in a lot of layers. So.
Do you always mix your palette before you start the painting?
Just typically the grays and typically just the grays, and then I'll kind of create the colors as I go along. But the grays will help neutralize anything that I create.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right. So now I'm gonna darken some areas here.
So how are you going to darken the areas? What are you mixing to put on the paper?
So I'm mixing burnt sienna. Really just use the color that you used on the base. So this was burnt sienna, and then I mixed in some ultramarine blue and
You're not covering all, you're leaving some spaces on purpose for the light?
exactly. So I'm leaving some spaces there for the light to hit. What I'll do is I'll put so if you think of this kind of coming out towards me, I'll create the lines on the tree here, and then I'll go back in, I'll wipe off my brush, and then I'll blend in with some water so that it blends together.
So that you don't have that hard edge?
Exactly, yeah. So it's not too hard of an edge. Totally.
So is that what you do for all your colors, is use the color you used in the background and darken it up with the opposite color to add the shadows?
Yeah, typically. Typically, because you saw my palette, it's not, I don't have like 1,000 different colors, so I'll just mix a lot of blues like ultramarine or cerulean, or I add Prussian blue sometimes if I want to get it nice and dark, and then and that's what I use. I use the base color.
Could you show us your palette again?
Yeah, so this is like a little, I've been using this a lot. It's a travel palette from Winsor and Newton. It's you can just search it online. It's really simple. And then I've thrown in some of my other colors here. I really love this one. It's what's that?
Keep going, sorry.
This is I really love using this for nature. It's transparent red oxide, and Prussian blue is great. And if you want really deep, dark ones, indigo.
And where are you mixing your colors? Could you show us how that looks? Just so we see the behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. This is it. It doesn't look that cool, but this is kind of a lighter gray. I gotta wet it a little bit. And then I'll mix my darker grays here. So you really just want to get your colors down and then glaze over with some grays and the same color.
So you continue to work kind of wet on wet because your paper was entirely soaked.
Typically, and for the sake of time right now, I'll sometimes leave the painting and go do something else and let it dry if I want to keep that color where it is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Or what you can do is now I'll jump to the other side of the painting here and kind of deepen the areas around this tree.
So you're using again the grayish mixture of that burnt sienna.
Yeah, and I like to be a little bit more little bold with my colors, so I'll throw in. I like purple on the backs of trees. I think this is rose of ultramarine, and maybe some purple lake in there.
Purple lake, you said?
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, purple lake and rose of ultramarine on my trees. Yeah, don't be afraid to throw weird different colors on your nature scenes. It just creates a more intriguing image. Like, don't worry about, I mean, if it actually looks like that in nature, but just think of how the colors are going to be on the paper, and you want the cooler colors, you know, to hold the shadows. And so I just have liked this style and color for trees. This purple, light purple or rose of ultramarine in the background here.
Yeah, that's neat. I haven't seen someone do that before.
Yeah, because when you look at the finished composition, if you look at it all at once, you're not really worried about, you know, what color is this or what color is that. Your eye just kind of sees darker hues and lighter hues. So, and initially, I don't know if I said this, but you want your lighter values to be in the distance and your darker values to be in the foreground. All right. So it's starting to come together a little bit now. So now that I painted here, I'll let that kind of rest and let that sit, because I like that there. And now I'm gonna hit my grass in the foreground here with some darker tones.
Okay. Quick question. Is Rose of Ultramarine as fugitive as some of the other colors?
As what? Fugitive?
Yes. Lori Foster is asking that question.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't know. I've just found that I liked to use that on as my cool color in the background.
Well, your image just disappeared.
Oh, somebody's trying to call me. I'm blowing up here. Just a minute.
There we go. Could you adjust the...
Yeah, one sec.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, a question for you.
Yeah.
It seems as though the background trees are as dark as the foreground. Why is that?
Right now, because that's the way it looks right now.
Yeah.
So what I'll continue to do is darken the foreground so that value kind of drops back, right?
Gotcha. Yes, that makes sense.
So this is kind of my background color, and then it'll get darker.
Could you adjust the camera again? It's still vertical.
shoot.
There we go.
And then here's if you want to make a color chart too to see how colors blend. I always keep that close by when I'm painting.
Can you stop on your color chart for a little bit?
Sure. Like literally so these colors here, I put here, and then you put them again here, and then you mix them together.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, so that's kind of a quick little chart that you can use if you're trying to establish a color. Is that good? Where am I at here?
Yep. There we go.
All right. So I'll throw some greens on here kind of to break up that color on the tree and to act as, maybe it's like a little bit of moss on the tree right there, or a little something. It's a lot.
So what are you adding in now?
Just a green color, like a wet green color. And it kind of breaks up the purple a little bit.
Is there a specific green you've used?
Honestly, I'm just picking up colors from my palette that I mixed. Like I said, towards the when you start getting into the painting, you'll mix colors on your palette, and they'll kind of be like neutral values, and I'll pick those up and throw those in there. I'll give you a list of colors that I was using, and you can send that out to people of which ones I mix.
Maybe we can add that in the description of the video, so that people who are referencing this again in YouTube, or you can go back to our YouTube channel and find that link in the description of the video. So is that the same green you added on the tree in the background?
No, I just mixed this green. I believe it's Prussian blue because it's a little bit darker. And Viridian or sap green. These are good questions. Like when I paint, I don't typically take note of exactly what colors I'm using. It's good to do that. I mean, it's good to note which one to use so you can use it later on. But since I only use like a very strict palette, I haven't bought a lot of new colors lately, so I just know which ones go together. And if you want it to go darker, you will deepen it with a cool color,
right,
or use a warm color to bring out some warmer hues.
So because you do a lot of painting and you've practiced a lot with the same colors, you've gotten to know them really well and how to work with each other. So
totally.
You're very spontaneous when you're painting and you're not necessarily...
Yeah, you don't want to be too focused on which color goes where, because that's not fun, right? You want to just look at your palette and kind of let the image guide you. Like I'll see like, ooh, a darker green over here. So I'm painting the grass and I'll add it here, and then I'll want it to be a little bit cooler. So I'll go over next door and grab some of that darker gray color and mix that in. And another thing you could do is initially when your brush is completely saturated with color, start in the foreground, because that'll give you the most saturated color, right? And then you work your way backwards along the painting. So the value tends to get a little bit washed out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can just kind of like drop in some colors there. All right.
Have you used your paint more pigmented in this stage, or adding all those greens?
Yeah, so this is more pigmented. So generally less pigmented to more pigmented as I go, definitely.
So the later layers are more pigmented, but also it's more in the foreground, is what I'm noticing where you're adding the newer paint.
Totally, totally. Yeah. So that's super dark. So I'll dab that with a paper towel. Right. Yeah, I hold a tissue when I paint too a lot. So if I don't like what it looks like, that's kind of like your eraser initially.
Right.
Or you could just let it sit and dry, you know, and or add water to it.
And what are you adding? What are you adding right now?
Prussian blue. I'm adding some darker hues, some cooler hues to this side of the tree. If you imagine this being in complete shadow here. And then I'll add some details, just like some texture as I go down.
By just creating different strokes?
Exactly, different brush strokes. And if I want to use like a more detailed or paint a more detailed area, I'll use the tip. Or if I want to just have a darker color, I'll get a bunch of water on my paintbrush and then I'll drop it in like this.
And you're using straight Persian blue?
Persian blue mixed with some of that, a little bit of the warmer gray color.
That you had added on before, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, and so I'll throw some purple in the mix here, some cooler purple, like Purple Lake or Rose of Ultramarine, and I'll darken that a bit, and I'll just come around the corner here and add some leaves, and I'm just dabbing the brush against the paper like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of creates, you know, a leafy look to it.
Right.
Maybe a branch comes over here. It's very loose, you know.
Yeah, there's some looseness to it. Just so that everybody knows, we will be going about 15 minutes over because we started about 15 minutes late. So that leaves us about 15 minutes to go.
Okay, sounds good. Like I said, it'll come all together at the end here. So this is my red oxide, and I'm just throwing it down here. It's pretty much red oxide and a little bit of burnt sienna. And this will create the pathway here.
And you're doing the strokes to go along with the shape of the pathway.
Yeah. So use your sketch as a guideline, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I'll drop in some darker colors while it's wet.
And that adds some texture and shadows, I'm assuming.
Yep.
And what is the darker color that you added?
So that is raw umber, and I think one of my gray colors there. All right. So let's darken these trees a little bit up here while that dries.
So what are you mixing to darken those trees up front?
Ultramarine and a gray. So probably raw umber or the burnt sienna. So this is where the dark values come in now. And you're just painting around the leaves a little bit that are coming into over the tree, kind of overlapping there. But you still have that purple underneath, so it creates a different hue there, which is nice.
Yeah. So this is the glazing that you were talking about, right?
Right, exactly. Exactly. So kind of glazing this area here. I'll dab that a little bit because you want a little bit lighter.
And what green are you adding? The same green you had added before?
Yeah, that kind of like that neutral green.
That Viridian, and I think it has some ultramarine blue in it.
Yep, a little bit of that. And so I'm going to throw some purple on here for a little bit of contrast and complementary color here. So there'll be some bushes in this area here.
And you're kind of doing the same technique with the brush as you did for the leaves earlier, aren't you?
Exactly. So, but it's smaller strokes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really use too many different brushes, but it's just how you use the brush too. And maybe I'll add some back here. And this is kind of along the same level as that in the painting. So the same value kind of works there as you go horizontally across. All right.
All that glazing just suddenly adds so much
Depth, right?
depth to it. Yeah. What are you adding right there?
So this is a lighter green, and it's just kind of glazing the foreground together.
So did you use a sap green mix?
Sap, yeah. I think a sap green and a light gray. You're always kind of mixing with your grays, so this is pulling everything together because these are kind of harsher lines, and so and you can kind of scrub out some color too if you want it to come out with your brush.
And that softens the hard edges.
Exactly, yeah.
And if I'm remembering correctly, your light gray is the ultramarine blue with the burnt sienna.
Mm-hmm.
And your darker gray is the ultramarine blue with the burnt umber?
With the raw umber.
Raw umber, sorry.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
What are you adding to the tree trunk now?
So that is some purple lake and ultramarine. I just wanted to get darker in these areas, and then I'll come up here too and create some leaves in this area. So what it does is it creates a border around your composition, so that it kind of, if the eye comes up here, it kind of bounces back towards the vibrant colors, and it draws the eye back into the painting. How are we doing on time there?
We've got about 5 minutes.
All right.
10 minutes left. And that's the same. Are you using Persian blue again?
I think this is ultramarine or Prussian. and a darker gray.
Okay. Then you're adding the same type of leafy shadows as you did in the other tree trunk on the right side?
Yeah, exactly. So I'll let that dry and kind of pull things together here.
And what are you doing right there?
So I'm adding a little bit of water to my brush and creating some softer lines here.
Gotcha. And you just added some burnt sienna?
Yeah, burnt sienna and some red oxide just to create a little ground color here. So I'm going to dry this off and then we can get into the shadows.
That's cool. How much, or you can answer this later, but how much are you drawing this stage, drying? And for people in the chat, I will be dropping in our feedback link again so that you can give us your feedback because we really appreciate that. And if you want to sign up for his mini workshop, I will be dropping that link too.
All right, so now I'm going to paint the shadows, and you want to paint your shadows all at once, just and use a similar gray color. So this is largely ultramarine and probably raw umber. And so I'll mix it all at the same time. And so this will be a shadow here, and it comes off the tree. And generally speaking, the objects closer to the light source will have more defined shadows, and those furthest away will have more, what do you call it? Softer shadows, softer edges.
Gotcha.
So this is kind of the center of my drawing. So I'll start there and then I'll work outward. So this side is going to be darker. And this is the part of the painting where things start to come alive. Because if you think about it, we just put a lot of color on the paper there, and they're trees, but there's no shadows for the trees. And our eyes want it to have a shadow because that's what we see. That's what we're used to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once we put the shadows on, it starts to really come together. So always kind of note where your light source is coming from. And don't worry about the underlying details because everything in shadow is going to be dark, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's the same shadow color.
yeah, it's the same shadow color. I'm just going around the whole painting right now and then thinking about where the shadow is going to be. So it's going to be pretty dark in here underneath the tree, right? And so I'll just take that shadow color, whatever you want to use, and just pull it in the direction of the light. And so maybe I'll darken this a little bit over here underneath. There's a little shadow in here from this bush. And a little bit darker over here. I'm just dropping in colors here.
Mm-hmm. To add more of that shadow.
Right, and then if you think about it, there's probably going to be a lot of shadows coming across this path here. So
from trees that we don't necessarily see defined in the painting, but we can assume they are there in the background.
Exactly. So and it's kind of, it's kind of cool just to create intriguing lines with your shadows too, because I mean, if you think about it, if you're in the forest and there's like a bunch of trees, your shadows can be really anywhere, you know. Who's to say what the branches look like overhead? So, and then I'll darken this path a little bit because it's in the foreground. I'm going to use some of that same color I used on it.
The red oxide with burnt sienna?
Red oxide with burnt sienna, because I don't like how light it is.
Cool. So,
and then, sorry.
Keep going.
Yeah, and then right now, this is a cool technique too. You could use a toothbrush and some white permanent paint or acrylic paint or whatever you have, and do a little spatter just on the sides here, and that creates a little bit of texture. And so it'll look white and really white initially, but it'll blend in.
And you said you're using acrylic paint?
You can use acrylic or what is it? The gouache.
Mm-hmm.
Gouache works well, just to create kind of texture in the painting. It's just a cool technique I like to use. And then once this is completely dry,
that's looking really cool. Hello, everyone who joined us a little bit later. Thank you so much for joining us still. Just want to remind you that you will be able to see this full live demo after we are done. It'll be ready for you to stream again on our YouTube channel. And apologize if we didn't make it clear that the sketch needed to be done beforehand if you followed along. If we do this type of live demo style again, I'll make sure that we let you know in advance. But I will make sure to include the sketch in the description of the video so that you can try it again later.
And so the last step I would say I like, and this is what I've been doing a lot lately, is to add these light rays into the painting. And you can think of it as light filtering through the leaves in a forest, and it creates these cool diagonal lines. So what I'll do is I'll get this flat brush here. For some reason, this pulls out a lot of paint better than other brushes. And I'll look at like an area where I'll want a light beam to come through the trees or the leaves. And I'll get it really wet in this area and just kind of scrub it out. And it'll hit this area here on the tree. So it'll really lighten up this area on the tree, and then draw it out to where the light is coming from, and then dab it with my tissue, and it'll pull out the light. And so initially on my sketch, if you look back at it, I had some diagonal lines, there's really light diagonal lines on there to show where the light was coming. And then I'll just use this as a guide.
So what you're doing is just lifting up some color that you had added before by adding the water, right? And dabbing it.
Exactly. So lifting up the colors so the white of the paper will show a little bit more, and create kind of like a splotchy sort of
the light
just think of like where the light's coming. Exactly.
Yeah, those little like beams, splotches of light.
Yes. Yeah.
While you're walking through a forest.
Exactly. And so that it creates a little bit more of a dynamic image. Right? So it's a little bit more mystical. And it's kind of how it looks in reality, but
yeah.
But it just creates a nice area of focus as you're going through the painting, and it really leads your eye back into the middle too.
Yeah.
So
that adds so much to the whole light and shadow contrast.
Right? So exactly.
And
I
I'm
can,
guess,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, and I can probably go through this painting and you touch it up for another, hour or so. Just like deepening, I would deepen shadows in here if I needed to. So I'd go back with my grays and I deepen different areas of dark shadow. So taking some dark blues and my umber and just kind of where the path is, create that shadow.
Mm-hmm.
So
Cool.
yeah, so that's basically it. What do you think?
I like it. It looks really good.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that the weight of your paper helps with it not becoming all muddy or the paper scruffing up, right? Because it absorbs a lot
Yeah,
of the water.
yeah. I've loved how Arches reacts to it. I had some other brands before that would kind of damage the paper, and I don't know if you've experienced it with that where the paper kind of ruffles up and gets in your brush. So I don't like that. But this paper is amazing. Arches 140 cold press. It's really great. So
Gotcha. Cool.
yeah,
I have one question for you. Um, since you are a dentist by day, right?
yeah.
Do you paint to de-stress or decompress or just as a hobby?
Um, I guess yeah. Painting is a great way to decompress if you need to. I'm pretty chill, so I'm not too stressed most of the time. But if you are feeling stressed, use it. I mean, it kind of takes you away from everything, kind of puts you in a different place, and it's absolutely a therapy. So I'll use that sometimes as a therapy. Not lately, but yeah. My job's awesome, actually. I have a great team, so it's not really too stressful. But yeah.
So you paint more for you and just as a hobby to
Yeah, it's more of
enjoy
a
it?
hobby and it's fun. It's just something that I've always loved to do. And and now I love teaching people about it and how to go about, my techniques. And if you have any questions, just send me a message on Instagram. I'll for sure message you back. Um, yeah.
Awesome. And I'll be putting your Instagram handle, Art Milko, right?
Yep. Art Milco.
Awesome.
Um, find me
It's
on Instagram.
cool. It's dropped. I dropped it in the chat. And just as a reminder again, if you could please give us your feedback, we really appreciate it. I'm dropping that link in the chat as well. And for Will's mini workshop, where he will be talking about or showing us how he goes a little bit about his sketch, but mainly focusing on how to create a dynamic landscape, including water reflections. And that'll be on March 30th. So there's the link to that. And for the mini workshop, you will get the sketch in advance so that you can have it. And Will, they are saying that the painting is stunning and beautiful, so thank you. Thank you, all of our Llama family participants that always answer each other's questions. That helps out a lot. We appreciate you so much, and we really enjoy you when you join us. So hoping to see you in future live demos, and don't forget to tag us with the hashtag Etchr Mini Workshop.
Absolutely, come join me in my mini workshop. It's gonna be super fun, and I got a bunch more to share with you guys. This was quick, but I got a bunch of techniques and a bunch of little tips that I can give you guys. So come join us. It's gonna be awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. And thank you, everybody. Have a nice day, evening, wherever you are.
Take care. Have a great day.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.